Married for 5 years, my husband David brought his first love, Lisa, home after a 6-month business trip. Lisa was already 3 months pregnant, and David said she was having a hard time and needed a place to stay temporarily. I refused, and David told me not to be so ungrateful. His tone was full of disgust, as if he'd forgotten that this mansion is my dowry. His whole family eats and uses my things. This time, I'm determined to cut off all financial support. I smiled and called my assistant, draw up a divorce agreement immediately. That gold digger might as well bring his mistress home openly. Learning that David was returning home today, I got up early and laid out all the souvenirs from his trips I had collected for him over the past 6 months and instructed Martha to prepare a table full of his favorite foods. At that moment, the door opened, and David appeared before me, arm in arm with his first love. I was surprised, and Lisa smiled as she walked toward me, gently caressing her belly as she greeted me. "Emma, long time no see." I looked at her slightly protruding abdomen, and anger flared up. Lisa seemed to notice the change in my emotions and quickly walked to my side, grabbing my wrist and saying sweetly, "Emma, don't get excited. This is all my fault. Blame me if you must, but don't hurt Fred." Lisa's simple words hit me like a bolt of lightning. I hadn't said anything yet, but Lisa had already confessed everything. David stood by, watching my every move, ready to rush up and protect Lisa at any moment. I clenched my fists and glared at David, asking, "Aren't you going to explain?" He sighed and gently said to Lisa, "Let me take you to choose a room first. I'll handle these matters." David's gentle tone stunned me. In our 5 years of marriage, David had never used such a tone with me. Under my gaze, he helped Lisa upstairs. The driver delivered 3 large suitcases. Lisa must have brought half her home with her. Lisa looked healthier than I. Why? He protected her as if she were a delicate doll. I slumped on the sofa, waiting for David to settle Lisa in and give me an explanation. I was about to rush upstairs, hearing the piercing laughter from above, when the doorbell rang. David's parents pushed the door open with gloomy faces and rushed upstairs without even acknowledging me. I followed them upstairs and saw David holding his parents' hands, saying sincerely, "I didn't mean to hide it from you, but Lisa had a hormonal imbalance in the early stages of her pregnancy, and I was afraid something might happen. I hope you can understand. Lisa and I love each other, and after all, the baby in her belly is your grandson. Please don't blame her." I thought about the past 5 years of marriage to David. Whenever his mother and I disagreed, David would always say that his mother was old and that I should be more tolerant, never standing up for me. I always thought that was just his personality until I saw him protecting Lisa in every way today. Only then did I realize that I had been a fool all along. Lisa held Mrs. David's hand and echoed, "Actually, I didn't intentionally try to ruin Fred's marriage. Fred and I are truly in love, and I hope you can understand." Mrs. David's brow gradually relaxed as she glanced at me standing outside the door. I knew she was hesitating. For the past 5 years, I had been transferring living expenses to her on time every month, and anyone could see that Lisa's financial resources couldn't compare to mine. My heart sank to the bottom. David, as my husband, didn't even bother to tell me about this beforehand, but instead embarrassed me in public. Did he think I had no temper or self-respect? Seeing the silence, Lisa's eyes instantly turned red, and she began to sob. "The baby in my belly is innocent. I will give birth to him no matter what. You can scold me all you want, but I hope my child won't be affected." Large tears streamed down Lisa's cheeks. She looked like someone who deserved everyone's pity. David lovingly wiped the tears from the corners of Lisa's eyes, his voice filled with resentment. "Mom, answer her quickly. You know pregnant women need to maintain emotional stability. David's parents had been urging us to have children ever since we got married. For 5 years, my belly had remained flat, and David's parents had said a lot of things behind my back, all of which I knew. Considering the importance of having descendants, Mr. David, who had been silent all along, spoke up. After all, Lisa is carrying the David family's grandchild. Everyone should just try to tolerate each other for the next few months. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's eyes were fixed on me. They stood together with such a sense of unity that I felt like an outsider. I couldn't help but laugh coldly twice. Doesn't anyone want to ask for my opinion? Seeing my displeasure, David stood in front of Lisa, looking very angry, and questioned, Emma, are you deaf? I've already told you in front of your face. What else do you want to know? I couldn't help but sneer. My husband went on a 6-month business trip and brought me back such a big surprise, without even offering a word of explanation, but instead treating me with such an imperious attitude. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Lisa started crying again, grabbing David's wrist and choking, Fred, if Emma is really angry, maybe I should just leave. Mrs. David immediately responded, displeased, you're carrying the David family's grandson. How can we let you leave? Then, David glared at me and said, say something. Look how scared Lisa is. Lisa is carrying my child, after all. If you have any objections, you can only vent in private. I won't allow you to hurt her. Lisa grabbed David's wrist and said urgently, no, Fred, I don't want you to get upset either. It would break my heart. Lisa's simple words brought tears to David's eyes. David's parents smiled and nodded, clearly very satisfied. Ed with Lisa. I couldn't listen any longer and turned to leave. I locked myself in the master bedroom for the entire afternoon, and the laughter coming from the living room was especially grating. In the afternoon, Martha knocked on the door and told me that Lisa had wanted to stay in my master bedroom, but Mrs. David had stopped her. She said that after all, you have the backing of Luna Enterprises, and we still need you to handle the household matters, so we can't completely anger you. She also said, Martha had been with me since I was a child, and she knew my temper, so she looked up at my expression when she got to this point. Seeing that I didn't interrupt her, she continued, she also said that all the expenses after the pregnancy will be paid by you since you are unable to have children, so you might as well participate and experience it. At this point, my face turned pale, and I straightened my sleeves and asked, is there anything else? Martha continued, she said that all your property will belong to this child since you don't have any children. I couldn't help but laugh. This family was making a good calculation. Although I was very angry, I didn't show it. I knew that now was not the time. Martha asked me what to do next, and I just smiled and told her to keep everything as usual. She brought me lunch, and after eating, I sat by the window in the bedroom, watching downstairs. At this moment, David was taking Lisa out. Memories flooded back. 5 years ago, it was also in the afternoon when I went back to my parents, crying and making a fuss, saying that I had to marry David. At that time, my parents already had a candidate for their son-in-law in mind. They had their eye on Tom, the only son of the Sams. The Sams' status in Riverside Town was second to none. Tom and I had been neighbors since childhood, and my parents had always liked him, often inviting him to our house for dinner. But I had never had any romantic feelings for Tom. After meet ing David, I had devoted my whole heart to him and was unwilling to marry into the Sams family. I always told my parents that we, the younger generation, should make our own decisions about marriage, and that Tom probably didn't like me either. But my parents told me that if Tom didn't have feelings for me, he wouldn't have picked me up and taken me home so many times after I went out to play. I didn't care whether Tom liked me or not at the time. The day I met David was at the Student Council recruitment fair on the first day of college. He and I picked up the application form almost at the same time. He politely apologized to me and took the initiative to give me the application form. That day, he was wearing a gray sweatsuit, his eyes were clear, he was very tall, and his smile was very sunny. His hands were beautiful, and as someone who loved hands, I couldn't resist him. The sudden made me unconsciously remember his phone number. After we parted, I added his WeChat account, and when I said my name, he said to me without hesitation, Emma, the heiress of the Luce family, I've heard so much about you. From that day on, I would unconsciously want to run into David on the street, and even desperately wanted to join the student council to have more contact with him. It was love at first sight, and I was willing to follow in his shadow. After the marriage, David took the initiative to propose helping me manage the office and let me be a stay-at-home wife. I didn't refuse him. I thought that husband and wife should be of one mind, and David's family conditions were very average. I thought that since he wanted to make a career for himself, I should help him. My parents and my best friend Rachel had advised me to think carefully. After all, my parents had told me before the marriage that David wasn't just marrying me because he liked me, but also because he valued the family behind me. I said that I didn't care about those things and that as long as he truly loved me, it would be fine. After marrying me, David's parents lived a comfortable life. They quit their jobs at the factory and lived very comfortably, taking the living expenses that David transferred to them every month. They would also go around proclaiming that David was now a CEO, which led many relatives of the Davids to ask David for help. Those relatives even asked David to arrange the marriages of their children, requiring him to choose people with status in Riverside Town as much as possible. Facing such a situation in David's family, I wasn't anxious. I thought that my family was rich, and it wouldn't hurt to help them out a little. David didn't know that on the eve of my engagement, Tom had come to me and given me a stock transfer agreement. He said that he hoped I would sign it and that if I was ever unhappy in my marriage, he wanted me to have enough confidence to turn around and leave David. He also clenched his fists and said to me seriously, "Besides Luna Enterprises, you also have me behind you. If he ever hurts you, I will never let him get away with it." I laughed and said that he was thinking too much. I had always believed in my judgment since I was a child, and I believed that David would never let me down. Looking back now, everyone's advice to me was true, but at that time, my mind was clouded by love, and I didn't care about anything. After the marriage, even if I went along with him in everything, he would still nitpick, saying that I didn't know how to do housework, that I had a bit of a temper, and that I wasn't as virtuous as the wives of his other friends. At that time, I devoted myself to David and would even change my habits for him. He liked to see me every day when he came home, so I would try to stay at home with him as much as possible and would also study recipes to make him delicious food in different ways. My best friend Rachel said that I had become a little unlike myself after the marriage, and that the heiress who loved shopping and taking pictures was willing to change for a man. David's parents were very satisfied with me, and his relatives would praise me for being beautiful and kind at every family banquet. David was probably the only one in the whole family who could find fault with me. I always thought that I wasn't doing well enough, but now I realize that he was just using me as a stepping stone. How could he think I was good if there was no love in his eyes? Just like that, without anyone asking my opinion, Lisa was settled in my home. In the evening, Lisa personally knocked on my door and asked me to have dinner, but after I refused her 3 times, she started crying sweetly outside the door. The crying grew louder and louder, attracting David, and she said, "Emma seems to have a big opinion of me." I asked her to have dinner, and she scolded me. I opened the door with displeasure and stared at Lisa, who was crying like a pear blossom in the rain, looking wronged. David rushed forward, lovingly took her arm, and comforted her. "Don't cry. Leave it to me." Lisa took out a hairpin from her pocket and handed it to me, saying, "Emma, this is handmade by me. Please accept it. Can we get along well in the future?" Before she could finish speaking, I immediately interrupted, "Don't dream. Who are you putting on this fake show for?" After saying that, Lisa sadly burrowed into David's arms. David rushed up angrily and slapped me. "Emma, I've already reminded you. Lisa is pregnant and needs to stay emotionally stable. You vicious woman, are you trying to kill her?" He looked at me as if I were an unforgivable sinner. This slap shattered all the remaining affection between us. I glared at the disgusting couple and suddenly walked over and slapped David twice in the face. I used almost all my strength, and David's cheeks instantly turned red and swollen, his face filled with disbelief. "Emma, are you crazy? How dare you hit me?" I looked at my red and swollen right hand and sneered, "Why? Oh, you were the one who hit me first. What's with the sudden panic? How can you, a mere gold digger, dare to bully the eldest daughter of the Luce family? Mrs. David heard the commotion and hurried over to persuade Emma. David was just a little anxious. Don't be so calculative with him. Seeing that my expression didn't soften, she quickly tugged on David's sleeve, winking at him. This was the only time David had ever hit me, and I could tell that he was a little nervous. But perhaps because Lisa was there, or perhaps because of his male ego, David turned his face away, unwilling to apologize to me. David! Mrs. David shouted. She knew that if we continued to be at odds, David would be the one to suffer. I was indeed a little agitated just now, but if you had obediently come down to eat with Lisa, none of this would have happened. These words were not an apology to me but were instead a blame on me for being insensible. My heart sank to the bottom, and I didn't even go down for dinner. I didn't see any of them for the whole night, and Martha was the one who felt sorry for me and brought me dinner. The next day, I slept until noon, and when I saw them preparing lunch, I left without looking back. My assistant at the office told me that everyone knew from somewhere that David had brought back a pregnant woman after a 6-month business trip, and that there was a lot of gossip about me at the office. Just half an hour after I left, David sent me a message, asking me to bring back 2 boxes of bird's nest soup for Lisa when I got back. He also wanted me to buy her some jewelry as a gift for angering her yesterday. His imperious tone made me laugh. I replied indifferently, if she wants to eat it, you can arrange it yourself. As soon as I sent the message, Martha told me that Lisa had taken all the vitamins that my mother had just sent me, saying that eating them was good for the baby in her belly. I asked, what did they say? Martha told me angrily, David's fam. Eily was so happy, saying that she could ask for whatever she wanted and eat whatever she wanted. My mother would arrange for someone to send me supplements every 3 months to make sure I took care of my body. I didn't expect my mother's good intentions to be taken advantage of by them. Even Mrs. David, who usually knew what was important, had tacitly approved of it, and I didn't need to give them any more face. Since they treated me like this, why should I maintain their reputation? I went directly to the office, held a high-level meeting, and after learning about the office's recent developments, I reorganized the work arrangements and deployments and notified all employees. From today onwards, I will return to Luna Enterprises, and David is not allowed to step into Luna Enterprises from today. The whole place was in an uproar. I didn't explain much. After the meeting, I directly asked my assistant to make my latest decision public. If David's family wanted a grandson, they would have to spend their own money. After dealing with the office's affairs, I went back home. I told my parents half an hour in advance, and my mother said that she would cancel all activities and have dinner with me in the evening. From the time I announced my decision until now, David had called me more than a dozen times, but I hadn't answered any of them. When I got back home, my mother saw the heavy, dark circles under my eyes, and her eyes were full of heartache. Emma, what happened? How did you get so haggard? My mother's gentleness made me lose control of my emotions for a moment, and I hugged her, feeling a lump in my throat, and cried. Since I was a child, I had always been the little princess of the family, and few people dared to bully me. I rarely cried in front of my mother. As soon as my tears fell, my mother realized that this matter was not simple. Her phone rang twice, and after glancing at it, my mother patted my back and said, "You've always liked to share good news and not bad news since you were a child. How could you not tell us about such a big thing and suffer such a big grievance?" I cried uncontrollably and slowly opened my mouth after a long time. I was the one who insisted on marrying David, and I have let you and Dad down. I know that you have always been critical of my marrying David, and I don't want to add to your troubles. My mother said to me a little angrily, "Your dad and I will always be your strong support. Don't worry about us blaming you. We said long ago that David wasn't a good match for you, but you had to marry him. But now it's not too late. Since he dares to treat you like this, you can just change to another one." I cried on my mother's shoulder for a long time. She was such a gentle person, but when she talked about David, she was also filled with anger. Dad came home at this time, and coincidentally, Tom, whom I hadn't seen for a long time, came back with him. I quickly wiped away my tears and joked, "Mr. Sam, how can someone as busy as you have time to come and play with my dad?" My mother nudged me and said softly, "Little Sam hasn't been to our house for a long time. He must have heard that you were back." I quickly stood up from the sofa, not knowing whether I should leave or not. Tom looked me up and down and sighed softly. The eldest daughter of the Luce family always likes to tease me a few times when she sees me. "Why have you become so quiet today? How can someone who has been domineering since childhood suffer such a big grievance after being married for a few years and come back to her mother to cry? You should take revenge on the spot for any grievance you suffer. You weren't like this before." I could tell that Tom must have heard the rumors outside and knew that there was a crisis in my marriage with David. I saw the heartache in his eyes, but I didn't want him to see me in such a predicament. I wanted to turn around and leave, but Tom rushed up and grabbed my arm. I haven't finished speaking yet. "Where are you going?" I couldn't help but blush again, and Tom let go of my hand, saying to me with a face full of panic, "Don't cry. I'm sorry for my tone just now. I apologize to you." Before he could finish speaking, 2 lines of tears had already rolled down my cheeks. Tom hurriedly wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes and gently stroked my hair, saying, "Why don't you hit me? I'm most afraid of you crying, you know that." Whenever I was angry when I was a child, Tom would gently stroke my hair like this to coax me. I didn't expect that Tom, who had now become a decisive CEO, would still coax me like he did when I was a child. In the end, Tom and I had a pretty good relationship when we were young. He was only 3 months older than I, but he was much more mature than I. When he was a child, he would tell all the children around me that I was his sister and wouldn't allow anyone to bully me. But I bullied him a lot. I would even snatch my favorite gifts from him every year on his birthday. One time, he didn't want to give me a limited edition figure, and we fought. Of course, he didn't hurt me, but I scratched the corner of his eye. That time, I apologized to him with tears in my eyes. He was the one who was injured and bandaged, but in the end, he coaxed me for a long time. After that, he would go along with me in everything. I thought he was afraid that I would hurt him again. Until my 18th birthday, my high school graduation party, he sent me a whole car of gifts and said to me vaguely, "Actually, I don't just think of you as a sister." I didn't understand the true meaning of his words at the time and even laughed at him for being a big boy who would send 1,000 paper cranes. That day, Tom stayed at my house for dinner, and we talked a lot. Until David called me. David angrily questioned me on the phone, "Emma, where did you go to buy bird's nest soup? Do you know that a pregnant woman is waiting for you at home?" My parents and Tom also heard David's tone through the receiver, and Tom rushed over and grabbed my phone and hung up. Tom said unhappily, "What an ignorant thing." I didn't go home that night, and David bombarded me with calls, but I ignored them. The next day, I didn't get home until almost noon. David was sitting in the living room with a gloomy face, glaring at me without saying a word. Martha quickly pulled me into the room and said, "Emma, you're finally back. You don't know, that woman was making a fuss about eating bird's nest soup all night yesterday because you didn't come back for the night, and everyone didn't go to bed until late at night. That woman got up in the morning and was unhappy with everyone. I followed your instructions and kept everything as usual for breakfast, but she still mocked me, asking if I was too old to show off my good skills. If you hadn't told me in advance, I would have quit today." After eating at home, I called Martha in advance and told her to keep everything as usual and to endure for a few more days. As the saying goes, if you want to destroy someone, you must first make them go crazy. Lisa dared to trample on my head and act wildly just because she was pregnant. In this regard, she was blind. After knowing what had happened at home, I went directly downstairs to find David. I sat down in front of him with a thud, glaring at him. The handprints on his face were still clearly visible. Before I could speak, he immediately shouted at me angrily, "Emma, do you still know how to come home?" I couldn't help but laugh at that moment. I looked up at him and asked, "This is my mansion. I can come back whenever I want. Is it any of your business? At this time, Lisa and David's parents pushed the door in angrily. Lisa walked directly to David and threw the card at him, looking displeased. Fred, didn't you say that I could swipe this card as much as I wanted? Why did the clerk say that the card couldn't be swiped? I originally wanted to ask Aunt and Uncle to pay, but the money they had on them couldn't even buy a bag. David said in shock, that's impossible. This card has an unlimited credit limit. It's still from the... At this point, David turned his head to look at me and questioned, Emma, was it you? Now that things had come to this, I didn't want to give them any more face. I laughed coldly twice and replied, yes, I stopped it. This is my supplementary card. I can stop you from using it if I don't want you to. What can you do about it? As soon as I finished speaking, Lisa pouted and pulled David, saying, Fred, you have to handle this matter properly. I have my eye on a few bags that I want to buy. David naturally couldn't lose face in front of his beloved, so he directly pulled me up, wanting to go to the side to talk. But he was pressed down by the bodyguards who rushed out. David shouted, Emma, what are you trying to do? I straightened my clothes and replied with a cold face, you were playing on your phone so seriously just now that you didn't notice that I came back with bodyguards. Do you think I would let you do whatever you want after suffering your slap? Seeing that I had protection, David's parents quickly persuaded Emma, it was all a misunderstanding. David didn't mean to hurt you just now. Let him go first, and we can talk things out, okay? I glared at her coldly and replied, if I hadn't brought people, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to leave today without giving you money, right? As if I had exposed their thoughts, David's mother instantly fell silent. Seeing David being pinned to the ground, Lisa was also frightened and shrank back in place, not daring to speak. I looked at Lisa and asked, aren't you two supposed to be true love? Why are you hiding so far away when he's in trouble? Seeing me mocking Lisa, David immediately shouted, Emma, say whatever you want to me, but don't bully Lisa. I couldn't help but sigh. How blind could David be, still defending Lisa when he could barely save himself? Seeing David still backing her up, Lisa immediately chimed in, Emma, it's not that I don't care about him, but I'm pregnant. If I rushed in and got pushed over by the bodyguards and lost the baby, it would be bad for everyone. I smiled coldly and slowly walked up to Lisa. Seeing that I was going to make things difficult for Lisa, David struggled recklessly, as if he were determined to protect her to the end. I wanted to gently touch Lisa's stomach, but David's parents stopped me. Faced with family ties, they no longer cared if I was their cash cow. David's father pushed me to the ground and roared, Emma, keep away from our grandson. I sat on the ground in pain, staring at them with a cold face. I remembered when I first met David's parents, they were incredibly enthusiastic towards me. They couldn't wait to prepare a feast to welcome me, and they couldn't stop smiling when they saw the gifts I brought. Now, for the sake of the child in Lisa's belly, they were laying hands on me. The two sides were deadlocked for 10 minutes when Tom finally arrived as promised. Seeing me slumped on the ground, Tom immediately picked me up and roared, who did this? I pointed at David's father with a cold face, and Tom immediately had the bodyguards hold him down. David went crazy and shouted, let my dad go. What do you want? I had the bodyguards tie them all to chairs. David's curses became increasingly vile. He even dragged my ancestors into it. I couldn't bear to listen anymore and had the bodyguards slap him 10 times before he shut up. My eyes were bloodshot. I pinched David's chin and said, when you see the surprise I've prepared for you later, you'll thank my ancestors 8 generations over. Seeing David beaten until his mouth was full of blood, David's parents couldn't help but roar at me. But what use was powerless rage? Lisa was also tied to a chair, crying and begging David to save her. I walked up to her, pinched her chin, and asked, is the child in your belly David's? David asked in shock, what do you mean? Lisa replied calmly to my question, I'm sure the child in my belly is Fred's. Lisa didn't know that every time she called David Fred in front of me, it made me feel disgusted. The reason Tom came after I got home was that I had given him a task last night. I knew that with the Tom family's influence in Riverside Town, he would be able to handle it. I directly took out various photos and chat records of Lisa entering and leaving hotels with her ex-boyfriend a month and a half ago. When Lisa saw this evidence, she cried out in panic, "How? How do you have these things?" David had indeed been entangled with Lisa during his 6 months of studying abroad, but he never expected that Lisa was also seeing another man at the same time. Lisa didn't plan to have a future with David because that man's conditions were much better than David's, a gold digger. But the man was just playing around with Lisa and didn't intend to have any commitment with her. After Lisa got pregnant, the man simply disappeared, even refusing to pay her breakup fee because she refused to have an abortion. Lisa had no choice but to choose David as her sucker. From the moment David arrived at the airport with Lisa, the driver told me that another woman had returned with him. Even if I still loved David, I was the only daughter of Luna Enterprises, and I wouldn't be stupid enough to hand over everything my parents had worked so hard for. In recent years, David had indeed removed many of my loyal employees, but what he didn't know was that if I could give him control of the office, I had full confidence in controlling the situation. When all the evidence was presented to David, he clenched his fists and roared at Lisa, "So, you never loved me from beginning to end, you just used me as a backup, right?" I didn't expect that even now, David was still hung up on whether there was love between him and Lisa. I publicly announced David's dismissal from the office and told him that I would thoroughly investigate all the accounts he had handled in the office over the past few years, and he would have to return any non-compliant funds at the original price. David panicked and hurriedly explained, "Emma, this is all a misunderstanding. I was deceived. Please forgive me this once." Tom, who was standing next to me, couldn't help but take out the divorce papers I had asked him to prepare and throw them in my face. "Sign it quickly, stop pretending to beg for forgiveness. You should know Emma's personality, she won't change her mind once she's made it up." David's parents also helped David speak after learning the truth. But it was all too late. I smiled coldly and stopped them. "Enough. It's meaningless to say all this now." That day, David's family, along with Lisa, were kicked out of my house. I contacted the property management, and from now on, the 4 of them were on the blacklist of visitors to my house. I didn't want to see any of them appear at my door again. After dealing with the matter, I took Tom abroad overnight. Of course, it wasn't for a vacation. Tom told me that he could help me with the jewelry industry that I had always wanted to enter. He knew that I had loved painting since I was a child and had a great talent for design. But I was the only daughter in the family, and my mission since childhood told me that I had to study business, and I was destined to inherit the family business. Later, design could only be regarded as one of my hobbies. In the past few years that David took over the office, I had mentioned to him several times about wanting to lead the office into the jewelry industry, but David had denied it. David also thought I was petty, that those were niche industries played by rich second generations. He had a strong sense of self-esteem, and he rarely let me attend any meetings except for the office's annual meeting. His reason was that if the 2 of us managed the office at the same time, it would confuse the employees. I respected his idea, so this matter had been shelved. Yesterday, I just mentioned it to Tom, and he immediately started arranging it. On the plane, he thoughtfully brought me snacks and earplugs. He still remembered that I liked quiet and liked to sleep when I was in the car or on the plane. After getting off the plane, I had dozens of missed calls on my phone. There were also a few messages from my assistant, telling me that David had taken his family to make a scene downstairs at my office, and had even attracted the media. Seeing me frown, Tom directly took my phone. After walking aside and explaining a few words, he told me, "Leave these worries to me next time." Although it was a short sentence, it still made my heart twitch uncontrollably. After marrying David, I had to handle many things in the house myself. It had been a long time since I had felt this kind of consideration and gentleness. David had been very busy these past few years. There were several times when I had a high fever and wanted him to accompany me to the hospital, but he was either away on a business trip or claimed that he was very tired and told Martha to accompany me. Even regarding the fact that we had never had children, I had asked him to go to the hospital for a checkup with me many times, but he had always excused himself due to the many office affairs and lack of time. The label of being unable to have children had been placed on my head for a long time, but my gynecological examination results every year were all fine. I carefully protected David's emotions, and to end up like this, I was very unwilling. After landing in New Eden, Tom took me to meet several well-known designers, and we reached a preliminary cooperation. Domestically, David's family was still making trouble these past 2 days, and had even put me on the trending searches on Twitter. I didn't see these trending searches, probably because Tom had taken timely action, but I told my assistant that I still needed to be informed of any developments. After the matter was discussed, I treated Tom to dinner. He bought me a bouquet of lisianthus. Seeing the flowers, I was stunned again. Tom asked me curiously, "What's wrong?" I smiled and replied, "You might find it funny, but David has been giving me pink roses every anniversary for the past few years." It wasn't that I hadn't told him that I liked lisianthus, but he always got it wrong. Seeing that Tom, whom I hadn't seen for several years, still remembered my preferences, I realized that it wasn't that David didn't remember, it was that he was unwilling to care. The capacity of a heart is limited, and he was unwilling to share some of it with me. That night, I drank a lot of alcohol for the first time in a long time. David had always wanted children and had high demands on me after marriage. It had been a long time since I had tasted alcohol. After Tom saw me back to my room, he seemed to whisper something in my ear, but I was delirious and not sure if I had heard correctly. The matter in Riverside Town had not been resolved yet, and my parents contacted me and told me to stay in New Eden for a few more days to relax. It just so happened that Tom wasn't very busy either, so he stayed. After I got married, he studied in New Eden for 2 years and was familiar with everything. He took me to the campus where he did his graduate studies, took me to many niche markets, and I found many fresh souvenirs from his trips. Tom paid every time. I asked him why he wouldn't let me spend money, but he said, "How can I let my sister spend money when I go out with her? People will laugh at me if they find out." But I remembered that when I was drunk that day, Tom didn't call me sister in my ear. We stayed in New Eden for 7 days. Every day, Tom took me to lunch after I slept until late in the morning, then we went shopping and looked at the sea, and didn't go back until midnight. During these 7 days, I felt more relaxed than ever before, and I also understood a lot of things. It was a lie to say that I wasn't sad. Every night, I would ask myself the question that Tom had asked me, "Have you ever regretted it?" I knew what he was talking about, and a week later, I gave him my answer. I don't regret it, because no one knew that all of this would happen. If I had to do it again, I would still choose this way. He gently touched my hair, sighed, and said, "Okay, as long as you don't regret it." David went to my office every day to make a scene and refused to sign the divorce papers. Forced to do so, I had to resort to the courts. David's family had no savings. After being kicked out, the 3 of them could only live in a small hotel. I heard that Lisa was beaten by David and was seriously injured, and the child miscarried on the spot. Since then, David had never gone to see Lisa in the hospital, because he had no money and asked her to return the gifts he had given her. Lisa was so angry that she went crazy in the hospital and was diagnosed with mental illness and locked up. My divorce case with David was heard half a month later. Because the evidence provided by my side was sufficient, David was sentenced to leave the house empty-handed and to compensate me $5 million. That $5 million was the money he had embezzled from my office after deducting his salary. After the hearing, David went crazy and roared at me, "Emma, you don't lack this little money, why do you have to force me?" I didn't look back at him, but left straight away. This farce was completely over at the moment of the verdict. Tom was waiting for me outside the door. Today was his birthday. I knew he was preparing a surprise for me. At the birthday party, he knelt on one knee in front of everyone and confessed his love to me, but I didn't agree to him. I took his ring and told him, it takes time to empty a heart. I hope you can wait for me. He hugged me tightly and said the same thing as that night, Emma, I've waited so hard for you.